Also, lots of news. Trade deadline. Josh McDaniels canned earlier this morning by the Raiders. We'll get to all of that. First, I'll tell you the episode is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Greg, we start with Josh McDaniels. Late last night, the news comes out. Mark Davis, of course, it's the Raiders. It's how they do things. They decide to fire Josh McDaniels. They fire Dave Ziegler, the GM out there. And they also fired Mick Lombardi, who is the offensive coordinator with McDaniels out there in Vegas. Just your thoughts on the firing of McDaniels.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts. I don't know how many of them are well thought out at this point. I will say at the top, just to let people know, because I get my game film from a certain source. Like I don't get it from NFL Plus because it's completely horrible. And, but I have a way of getting film in a timely manner, normally very timely, that's, much more conducive to my work. Like it's all offense, all defense, all special teams. Like each is a separate, file. Anyways, long story short, the guy who supplies the film apparently had internet issues all day on Monday. So I got pushed back an entire day on the work that I normally do. I mean, normally I had the film by like noon on Monday at sort of like the latest. I didn't get the film until I woke up on Tuesday. So, just to let people know, like, I've been a little bit behind and so is this pod. So my apologies, for not getting this up sooner. On McDaniels, I guess my first thought, Nick, would be, I understand this is we're in the entertainment business. We're in, sports business and it's cutthroat and it's easy, people on Twitter to say, fire this guy, fire that guy. It's a little bit different when, the people, I went through this with Bill O'Brien, going through this with Josh McDaniels, the particulars involved, how hard they work. And, so my first thought is, one that's, personal that, it's disappointing to me, what happened. And I feel bad for Josh and his family because it's not just Josh. I know, it's easy for people to hate Josh McDaniels. That's not been my experience with him. They think this and that of him. That hasn't been my experience with him over, many years. In sort of different capacities. And, and there's also, a family involved. It's not just Josh McDaniels in the visor, what you think of him on the sidelines. There's also, wife and kids and that whole situation, along with everybody who works for him, who are all going to be looking for jobs right now. And look, and obviously hits different when it's someone from the Patriots family who, you have a long history with. So that's my first thought. My second thought is 25 games is a joke. Like, at least if, and I don't know what Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler said to Mark Davis when he hired them or the pitch that they gave him. And I can guarantee you it wasn't, you guys made the playoffs last year. We're going to take you to another level. It wasn't that. And I know the fans thought that was going to happen. There's a whole lot of things, especially with that team that made the playoffs, quote unquote, made the playoffs. They really weren't that good, by any statistical measure that year and got, lucky getting into the playoffs. I know to a certain degree of certainty that, Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler told Mark Davis basically in so many words, you need a complete rebuild here. What's gone on with personnel, all the draft failings that I remember there was one stat, I couldn't find it recently, but it was how many games were being played by draft picks, of the team. And the Raiders were way down below from the Mayock and Gruden, sort of experience. The quarterback position was one of that needed to be rebuilt. I know there are people who like Derek Carr and things like that. I could tell you that it was not just Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels who wanted Derek Carr gone for a long time, with the Raiders. And look, I just, McDaniels wasn't winning anything with Carr. That was there on film. He left too many plays on the field last year. He needed to go. The quarterback playing after him, Jimmy has not played well. So, but anyway, my main point is, if Mark Davis agreed to buy into a vision of we need to do a total rebuild and we might take a step back before we go forward, you don't end that after 25 games. If Mark Davis thought that the team should go from 10-6, 10-7, whatever they were in the playoffs, to go beyond, that they were just looking for somebody to put them over the top, he should have hired somebody different with a different plan. So this is Mark Davis not living, to me, it's him not living up to his side of the bargain, which he's entitled to. He's the owner. My other thought is from watching this team, and I haven't watched them a ton on film last year. I definitely watched all of them and studied them very closely last year. I've watched some of their films. After this was completed, or we got the news last night, I actually, took more time. I watched the Raiders offensive film from Monday night against the Lions because I wanted to see the part that the quarterback played in it. And it wasn't quite as bad as I thought it was going to be, but it was pretty bad. I mean, most of it was on the protection, but, Jimmy had, one time in the end zone severely underthrew Davante Adams that should have been a touchdown. He had two other plays that should have been wide open and a touchdown. They make those plays, that game's a much different game. And that's also sort of been the key, basically the theme of McDaniels' 25 games in Vegas on film to me was whether it was the coaching or the quarterback or a combination of both, Raiders quarterbacks did not make enough plays that were presented to them by the scheme, by the play calling to put this team over the top. It was there on film. It didn't do it. Why that didn't happen, I don't know.
FanDuel is the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Ever wish you could navigate the betting field with the confidence of a pro? Enter Odds Are. They're not a sports book, but they're the sports betting advisor you've always needed. It's like having a playbook for smarter bets right in your pocket. I've been absolutely loving the experience, and I think you will too. Especially since Patriots Press Pass listeners get a 30-day free trial. Elevate your game day and join the smart betting revolution. Go get it at oddsr.com/presspass. That's oddsr.com/presspass.
I mean, I think, I don't know, Nick, if you have any questions about it, anything in particular, but just off the top of my head, those are sort of my thoughts. And I guess we'll get in the New England component of it, but, I'll be interested in your thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, I just don't think he's a good head coach. I don't think he's proven he's a good head coach. Some mistakes that he has made from an operational standpoint, clock management, certain situations with score and time. I don't think he was good enough. I think there's two separate topics here. There's the McDaniels and what he did and what Ziegler did and the job that they did. And then there's the ownership piece of this. So I don't think McDaniels was a good coach. I don't think he ever proved that he was a good coach. I think he's had two opportunities and he was not good at either one of them. I would say that, the pathway, and as you said, Greg, if Ziegler and McDaniels went to Davis and said, this is going to be a slower rebuild, that's fine, but then act like it's a slower rebuild. They didn't act that way. I mean, when you go out there and you sign Chandler Jones to that contract, when you make the trade for Davante Adams and you give him that contract, when you replace Derek Carr and the plan is Jimmy Garoppolo, another bridge quarterback that's going to get you at best, 8-9 wins? To me, McDaniels and Ziegler, they did a Belichick. They wouldn't choose a path. You either have to completely blow it up and say, John Gruden ruined this program. We're starting from scratch. It's going to take 3-4 years. Or you do what they did, which was invest assets into the top wide receiver in football, pay a bunch of money to one of the top edge rushers in football. So they seem to be trying to do both at the same time. they seem to be trying to spend money and bring talent onto the roster. That was kind of a win now mentality. But then they also understood to a point that they didn't have enough talent on the roster and they needed to build through the draft. So it was just really a mixed message. And I don't know if that was Mark Davis saying, let's spend on the toys. I don't know. But if a rebuild is a rebuild. And to me, Jimmy Garoppolo is not a rebuilding quarterback. We know who he is. So I think some of the decisions that were made just leaves me kind of confused on what the plan was. It didn't seem like they had a clear plan. As far as the ownership, Mark Davis stinks. And that's what I would say. You know, look, you can say that McDaniels wasn't a good coach and that he failed a number of times. But when you fire a guy 25 games in, that says more about the ownership and the process. It means that you had no idea. So I just think this was, it kind of looked like a rudderless mess in Vegas. I don't think the plan on the field made sense if you're totally rebuilding. I think the owner was not patient for a rebuild. And I think it's just a disaster. And you have a mercurial owner who pulls the trigger overnight. So I don't have much hope for the Vegas program with Mark Davis as the owner right now. But to skip ahead, I do think now the question, and I've already seen it on X this morning, Greg, is will Josh McDaniels be back in New England?
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. I just, I don't disagree, with your assessment. I still think, I know Josh McDaniels is a really good football coach. Whether he's a head coach, I think he has the potential to be a good coach. Obviously the results aren't there. So, maybe that should tell me something, but I just think that the second time around, I think that, I thought that McDaniels needed, especially after the first season, give him the first year to get his program under wraps, get it going. But I thought that he needed to get away from play calling. Like he needs to be a CEO head coach, to make the team the best that it can be, sort of, help make the one or two plays that determine games. I mean, you look at the last 2 years, how many games did they lose by one score or less? I mean, that shows that you're there, but you're not quite there. And I thought that he could have put them over the top, if he was out of the offensive play calling. And I do agree with you about the mixed messaging as far as what they were doing. I think, and I don't know this, I think their plan was to add a few key pieces to, especially Devontae Adams. The Chandler Jones thing, I never really understood. He didn't fit the Patriots program when they let him go, and I didn't think he was going to fit the program when he came back here, and he was aging and back into the Patriots sort of system, and that was just a complete mess. So I agree with you. I think the plan was to do, help them in the short term, sort of bridge the gap. And in the quarterback, you can group in there. I think you're probably right. Like, the more I think about it, they probably just should have done a hard reset, just totally, and said, we need to tear this down. And the owner needed to come out and say, look, I believe we needed to tear this down. We need to build it back up. I'm on board with it. They have X amount of years to get it done, but we want to see progress. But they decided not to do it. I think because of Josh's experience in Denver, he tried to do it in a nicer, gentler way and not to be, Josh Denver 2.0. But the bottom line is, like, it's a complete joke to give somebody 25 games. Like, if you believed in their vision, I mean, at least give them to the end of the year. Yeah, it doesn't look good right now. Yeah. But, you never know. I mean, the Lions were 1-6 last year. And if Mark Davis was the owner of the Lions, Dan Campbell would have been out. There's no question about that. And I understand there are different sides. The Lions offense was good last year, so you could see that it was about the defense. But still, you at least have to give them to the end of the second year. And to me, this is Mark Davis, like having an open air suite in Vegas and hearing it from the fans and not wanting to hear it anymore and being out in public and having rabbit ears. So my advice to coaching candidates going forward is, make sure your owner sits up in a box with a lot of closed windows, or at least people aren't around him. I mean, how much differently would it be if Kraft had, Patriots fans in that Saints loss, like going up and down, yelling at him, like as we seen the video with Mark Davis.
With the busy fall season already in swing, you might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals for jam-packed days. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you fuel up fast with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. Head to factormeals.com/PressPass50 and use code PressPass50 to get 50% off. That's code PressPass50 at factormeals.com/PressPass50 to get 50% off.
The New England component of this, I have no idea. I mean, it's possible. I'm glad everybody's thinking about themselves and their football team after somebody just, loses their jobs and things like that. But, I assume Josh McDaniels is going to need, and he has another 4 years left on his contract. I would highly doubt that he does anything this year, maybe towards the end of the year. I don't know. But I think you always need time to compress, reflect, gather the family. What's the family going to do? Are they coming back to Massachusetts? Like, there's a lot of bigger picture life things than, whether Josh McDaniels can help the Patriots. But he did this, when he was done in St. Louis. He worked with Billy. That's when Bill O'Brien was going to go to Penn State, and Josh came on for the playoff run, so that wouldn't be a foreign concept. I'm not sure that Josh wants to do that again, but, who knows? I think that the most likely course is Josh takes the rest of the season off, goes home, spends time with his family, and then figures out what he wants to do next.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's all going to be a personal decision, and Lord knows I've made a personal decision, recently about leaving the career that I love and coming across the country for family. So I get the family component for sure. The question I think for Josh is, where is his future when everything gets settled? He might take the rest of this year. As you said, he's going to get paid handsomely from Mark Davis, so he's not going to be struggling financially, but he's going to have to think about what his football future is. Does he have a football future? Where could he get a job? How much damage has this done to his reputation? I don't think a ton, because coordinator is different from head coach. But is there a possibility that he ends up back in New England? Of course there is. They don't have to pay him, number one. And we've seen that Belichick and Kraft love that idea of adding to the staff without having to pay a guy a lot of money, if any money. And we know that the New England family is the New England family. And if we've learned anything from the history, it's that when a guy gets let go, there's a pretty decent likelihood that guy will be welcomed back into that family. So unless you do an Eric Mangini, then you'll be casted aside forever. So, yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's a chance that Josh comes back. I don't know when that would be. I don't know what his job would be. I don't know if Bill O'Brien would go. Those are all questions for another time. But just the idea of McDaniels returning to New England, I don't think is crazy at all, given the circumstances.